Uh, Good evening, everyone. It is Chris and Chuck back with another Underdog Best Ball stream. Chuck, we have a couple of single entry contests that dropped within the last day. I don't know if they came out today or at the end of yesterday, because honestly, I wasn't paying attention yesterday. But we have the $5 Corgi here, and then we have a $75 Bulldog, both with uh, slow options and then fast 20-second options. So my plan was to fly through a corgi here, but like the structure in this one, Chuck, same first round as all the other ones we've been doing. Two advance out of the 12 team pods, 1 out of 10 in the first week of the playoffs, 1 out of 5 in the second week of the playoffs, and then a 75 seat final here in the corgi. And then over in the bulldog, it's actually two advance in each round, and you have a nice 20-seat final there. Just 3,000 people entering that contest. So obviously a little bit more of a higher dollar entry there. That might be slightly outside of what some people that are just getting started on Underdog are trying to do with their bankrolls, but that's a really, really nice structure, I would say.
Yeah, on a smaller bankroll, I would personally just rather enter 15 puppies. But I'm considering entering the Bulldog. The biggest entry I've made this year was in the Underdog had a $35 single entry. I think it was called the Greyhound. But the $75 Bulldog, I love the structure, so I might throw one in there.
All right. So if anybody wants to jump on into a $5 single entry draft with me, we'll do that shortly. I'm going to have to apparently nuke my browser here and get back into one. So a lot of news. We have training camps have just basically kicked off around the country this week, Chuck. And there's been quite a few developments that definitely matter in best ball. What are some things that have stood out to you in the first kind of wave of training camp stories we've been able to get here?
Yeah, and I actually haven't seen as much news as I was expecting these first few days of training camp. I mean, Tua got a pretty big contract. I don't know that has any effect on anything we're doing here, but thought that was pretty interesting. He did get paid like 50 million a year, not bad. The big one to me is the Chargers running back situation, which we've touched on a bit. And it seems like J.K. Dobbins is the guy from what we've seen. Kamani Vidal is potentially a cut candidate, which is something we've talked about as well. So have you seen anything on the running backs in Los Angeles specifically?
I think you just hit on it. We've seen Dobbins and Jarrett Patterson, I think is the name of the other running back that has been getting top line reps, formerly of the Commanders here in camp. Now it's early. I think Gus Edwards has been sitting out due to injury, so that is obviously playing a role there, but that's what's going on with the running back. Staying with your Los Angeles Chargers, local to you out there in Los Angeles, Chuck, the wide receiver rotation is what stood out to me. The news we got, I think, either last night or today. And Quentin Johnston, outside of the starting rotation at receiver, seems like that's, I guess, not totally surprising if you watched football last year, but that's definitely not good news for Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, Quentin Johnson is kind of on my JMO. He's kind of on my JMO take, like on the same level. Like Jameson Williams, I will not draft. Quentin Johnson, I have drafted a couple times just as a stacking partner with Justin Herbert. But I have a ton of DJ Shark. He's probably actually my highest drafted last round player. I talk about all these last round guys I'm drafting. I'm trying like to get other guys because I don't want to end up with this giant bag of DJ Shark. But he's their deep threat. I'm not expecting many targets, but I think he has a spike week potential. And then looking at like Joshua Palmer, his ADP just keeps climbing a little bit. I think it's around 100 right now. What are we doing there?
Yeah, we got Palmer, Ladd McConkey, and DJ Chark as the reported starters there. And I'm definitely in on Palmer, definitely in on, I guess, Chark now. I haven't been as aggressive there as you have been, so congrats to you with the closing line value there for sure with him. I wanted to look at ADP change, biggest movers in the last 7 days. Talked about running backs a little bit. Audric Estime with the Broncos, the biggest mover. Nick Chubb is sitting here. Rashad Bateman with the Ravens at wide receiver. There's been a ton of hype for him. Dontavian Wicks with the Packers. Daniel Jones even at quarterback for the New York Giants. The guys that are going down Cam Akers just lost his ADP, so you can ignore that. But Ben Sinnott with the Commanders, Kendre Miller potentially on the chopping block for the Saints, and then we just talked ad nauseum about Quentin Johnston. So our tracker is on top of that news, and I think we had a couple of questions just on the tracker in our Discord. Wanted to clarify for anyone who may have missed that. We did just recently update the feed to correct any team changes over the last month or so because there were a couple of players I know that were not in the right place there. So Brees Hall off the board. I have the ninth pick here, Chuck, and this is my blind spot right here. Puka
Yep.
Nacua on the board alongside AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson. So I will say, I think the easiest thing to do here in a single entry format is to just go with your best available player in both your rankings and I guess ADP if you really don't have the passion to take. And so for me, I'm just going to take AJ Brown here.
Yeah, all that combo stuff we talk about, I don't really consider it in this contest. I take completely my guys here. Back to that Kendre Miller note though. So I've been pretty low on Kendre. I've been pretty high on Alvin Kamara, and it's tough because Kamara is not a good running back, right? He got 75 passes last year, and that's going to be the bulk of his fantasy production. And, the thesis with Kendre was he could possibly take over the bulk of the rushing work. Now, it doesn't look like that could be the case anymore. And so, but he doesn't lose all his value. Now he just has similar value to the other handcuff running backs that are getting drafted slightly later than him. And so I think we can still mix in Kendre, and I haven't been drafting him, but I will click him some if he falls quite a bit. But I mean, I think we've mentioned too, Jamal Williams is still on this roster.
Another night where Jets 13 has gotten in the contest. Thanks for being here, John. And he did not get his favorite team's best receiver. So that is super unfortunate. I'm a little shocked that I can get Marvin Harrison at the 16th pick. So even though there's no direct correlation with AJ Brown or his playoff matchups, I'm just going to do that here because this seems like a good value.
So we know that correlation is going to have a positive expectation no matter what, but like comparing this small finals field to a larger finals field, are you more or less concerned about the correlation with Week 17 games and stacking? I guess.
I guess less concerned because our opponents aren't going to have as many opportunities to get optimal lineups in here. So it just feels like we'll see some weirder combos advancing. You had a larger portfolio than I did across like the different contests last year. I can tell you that on Underdog, I pretty much only drafted Best Ball Mania last year. That's one of my biggest changes this year is kind of tailing you and playing some of these smaller contests, different entry limits, different dollar amount limits to see if that can improve my return a little bit, Chuck. But in your experience, what did you see in some of those finals that you had made it to in Week 17? Were the finals teams drastically different in the smaller contests or what?
I would say that. So I made 8 finals last year, and most of them were in smaller fields. Like one of them, I had 2 entries in like a 27 entry, and I think the winner was just what you would expect: CD Amon Ra, and then whatever in the rest of the positions. But I was still like fully stacking, correlating, just like I was in the larger field contests. And I mean, I had a lot of success in those contests, and so I guess my next question is just, I think I'm considering Week 16 a little bit more in these smaller contests, just because getting to these small field finals with any team, you have a shot at taking it down.
You mentioned not or just kind of being more liable to just grab your guys in this format, right? So one of the things we talked about when we were going through unique combos, which is less of a concern in this particular type of format, was reaching a little bit to get guys you like a little outside of their ADP range. So are you still kind of willing to do that? You're going to reach like a round or half a round or 2 rounds for somebody just to kind of make sure you get that guy. It's going to obviously make your roster a little bit more unique, but if we're right about that player, obviously that's going to make a huge difference come playoffs, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like I didn't have many big reaches. I did my $5 single entry already earlier today. I think I took Amari Cooper like 5 or 6 picks ahead of ADP, and that was probably like the biggest reach that I had. But like I said, I want my guys, and I'm not striving for uniqueness, but that is a benefit of taking Amari Cooper. At because I think I had the 12th pick, so I would have got him at like pick 35 or 36. And I mean, I get my little bit of uniqueness that way. Not that I need it. but I'm willing to reach for the guys that I want for sure. Yeah.
Taking Pittman here, so going with 3 receivers to start. And I'm pretty happy with this group of receivers, Chuck. This is a really strong start at this position. Now, more important to kind of fill out your starters at the other positions in a smaller format like this, or are we still going kind of zero RB ish? Like, what's your thoughts there?
I guess I didn't think too much about that earlier, but my first instinct is that zero RB is less powerful in this format, just because we don't need to make that much of a bigger difference in the smaller finals field.
I think elite quarterback is pretty important
Yeah.
in this format too. So I think that's something that I would encourage people to do. Also have Skeletor in here as well. I believe he's one of our VAR members as well, picking out of the 7 holes. So appreciate him joining. Um, and I've got a couple of outs here. So I have AJ Brown with Jalen Hurts still on the board, and obviously Anthony Richardson. I gave myself that option with Michael Pittman, and then Kyler Murray, who has the upside, I would say, is here as well. But understanding that this is going to be like a pretty common combination on AJ Brown teams, I'm still going to do it here in this single entry format with Jalen Hurts because I do feel like this is a decent way to have an entry in this type of contest.
So I've seen this a few times where Josh Allen is the 3rd or 4th quarterback off the board, and I used to never see that, but recently I've been seeing it much more.
How much of this is being driven purely by stack options, right? I mean, of the guys that we just saw go, I guess Mahomes is close to this. Josh Allen is the one that has all of his pass catchers go after him, right? So you can take Allen and then kind of plan how to build that stack afterwards. Whereas your Mahomes owner, your Lamar Jackson owner, myself with Hurts, we were all trying to make sure we had some kind of pairing there with one of his teammates. So that's probably what drives that this year.
And so this Mahomes got drafted ahead of ADP here, I'm pretty sure. And yeah. I've seen this idea because it's really hard to stack Mahomes if you take him at ADP unless you have like the 4 or 5 turn pick. You can guarantee 2 picks in a row, Pat Mahomes, Marquise Brown, whatever. Because a lot of times now, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are not making it back to you if you take Mahomes at ADP. And so I've been taking Mahomes ahead of ADP on the other side of the board sometimes. And most of the time, Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy is still there. Sometimes they're still taken ahead of ADP. But that's been one of the ways I've been taking Patrick Mahomes to ensure that I don't just have a naked Patrick Mahomes, because I have way too many naked Patrick Mahomes teams.
It's Adam STH94 here. I've actually done what he's done at the 4 or 5 turn a couple of times with Pacheco and Mahomes. So it's interesting to see him doing that a little bit further up, the draft pick slots, if you will. So Trey McBride going, I guess, kind of close to where he's supposed to go, but that would have been an intriguing option for me to try to double stack with Kyler, although I guess you shared with us a few streams ago that that's a pretty chalky stack as well. So I think I have several options now with how I want to go with a secondary stack. I think now with an elite quarterback, though, Chuck, I probably want to just focus more on, I don't want to say like a complete punt for a second quarterback, but I'm going to wait until pretty late in the contest, I think, for that second quarterback now.
Well, on that note, too, so a lot of times I don't want to complete punt my second quarterback because I want the possibility of them being the guy in one of the playoff weeks. But in this format, if Jalen Hurts is a guy 3 weeks in a row, you get to the finals, like you're only up against, a few other Jalen Hurts teams versus Best Ball Mania, where you might be up against 60, 70 Jalen Hurts teams if he really is a guy 3 weeks in a row. Yeah, I love the Chris Godwin pick. This feels like a guy that could rise in ADP over the next couple of weeks for sure.
I'm really intrigued in the fact that they're moving him to more of a slot receiver role. It just feels like this is going to be an amazing asset at this ADP in all formats, PPR, half PPR. Ceiling could be massive here. Due for some touchdown regression after last season. I believe it was only 1 or 2 touchdowns. So I'm happy to have him here, and now I really can go all in on the other positions because I got a pretty high floor, I would say, at receiver here.
And if you're drafting on one of the other sites that's full PPR, Chris Godwin's ADP is around the same, and he's unquestionably more valuable on full PPR sites if this slot talk is going to come to fruition. So go draft Chris Godwin. It's an interesting one too, because the difference between his and Mike Evans' ADPs, like I would still bet that Mike Evans, beats him, but it is a fair gap.
Interesting to take Rasheed Rice here. Xavier Worthy right on the board as well. I think right now, even though this sounds a little crazy, I probably prefer Worthy straight up there. What do you think?
Well, I've been slamming Rashi Rice so much; he's like my third highest receiver overall now. I'm taking him over Xavier Worthy every time.
This is a quicker one because we only have 20 seconds as well. Um, Ended up with Richardson auto pick. To be completely honest with you, we did not see dual like elite quarterback combinations fare very well last year. So that doesn't bode well for what I did here, but I did get Anthony Richardson quite a few picks behind his ADP here. So that could be interesting in this format. I have to believe I'll be one of the few teams, probably across all of Underdog, that has this combination. So we'll see how it does.
And it worked out that you have Michael Pittman.
Wasn't the worst auto pick. I definitely am done a quarterback now. We'll put it that way. I'm used to the 30-second pick clock. I'll put it that way. But that is interesting that he was still available. It's probably because I had Pittman. I don't think anyone else was super motivated to take him. But anyway, I digress. I got to fill out my running backs, tight ends, and backup receivers now. That is totally fine. Still a good position to be in. That certainly could have gone significantly worse. Talked about being interested in correlations. Obviously, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts looking at week 17, but week 16 you said you think is pretty important here. So obviously I'm looking at that matchup for the Eagles. We've got the Commanders. We've got the Steelers in week 15 as well for Philadelphia. And then with the Colts, we have the New York Giants championship week, Tennessee Titans in semifinals, and the Denver Broncos in week 15. So for discussion with you, for my two opponents that are drafting against me in this lobby, you now know what I'm looking for. So there we go.
You might end up drafting one of these guys. So I want to go back to the Josh Allen discussion with his wide receiver room, because we keep hearing negative things about Keon Coleman from like the staff. And then I saw a video of him. He looked okay today. People thought he was great, but I've noticed Curtis Samuel creeping up into like the 80s. I've seen him go a couple of times today. So is your opinion on the Buffalo wide receiver room changing at all?
I think Coleman, Shakir, and Samuel is like pretty clearly what everyone expects to be the starting trio. I just don't know how locked in that is as Coleman comes off the board first here in that room. I think I'm definitely being a little bit more cautious with Coleman than we were at the beginning of the draft season here. I am going to go with Jake Ferguson for my bring back in my Philadelphia stack here at tight end. And I think that's probably pretty close to where we draw the line here at elite tight end as well at the end of like the probably the beginning of the second tier there. So, but I'm happy with Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, I have him and Joku and Goddard in there. And then while we're on, this is another topic, but if Mark Andrews wasn't on the Ravens, where would you rank Isaiah Likely?
Ooh. I mean, do we like Mark Andrews at that ADP because we think he's one of the best tight ends of all time, or is it because he's kind of anchored to Lamar Jackson? That's a really interesting topic, I think, to dive into. We would absolutely probably see Likely get significantly closer to Mark Andrews' ADP if there was no Mark Andrews. We did see Likely start quite a few games last year, though, didn't we, when Andrews was hurt? And he didn't really meet the expectations of like Mark Andrews' ceiling, although he did still do pretty good. So I'd have to think about that more, Chuck, because I don't really have that fleshed out fully. Obviously, you can tell by my answer here off the top of my head, but that's definitely a good thought experiment.
Yeah, I thought of it because I would have put him in this tier right here, probably right behind Njoku and Goddard, maybe.
This is kind of falling. Well, I'll let Cocky pick. All right. This is kind of going the way I want. If Najee Harris is the first running back I select in the 8th round, this we did say we think zero RB is less important in these single entry formats, but I still feel very good about the volume of carries that he's going to receive here.
Yeah.
88th pick overall, a little behind his ADP by about half a round. Very happy to start filling out running back with a player like that here.
Yeah, this is about where my cutoff is for if I'm going zero RB. I probably want an RB like Najee Harris.
And I really do like Jalen Warren this year. He's kind of everybody's popular player on, like, if you read a bunch of articles about players to buy in best ball or in regular fantasy leagues this year, kind of in the middle rounds, he's going to be in a lot of those popular mainstream articles because of his passing game role under the previous administration. So I really am interested in how that's going to change this year with Arthur Smith now calling the shots in Pittsburgh. I have to believe Najee and Warren basically having the same round ADP suggests that the field is not really sure how to treat these guys, and that's why Najee's kind of falling back towards Warren's ADP. I've been on Warren for about a year and a half, but I'm starting to see the light on being a Najee truther here at his cost.
Yeah, I mean, when we've discussed it before, like my final reasoning for being on Najee over Jalen is it's very clear the staff likes him more. And like you said, that could change this year. I listened to a breakdown on the Steelers offense, and number one, I was already off George Pickens, but it got me completely off George Pickens. And number two, Jalen Warren was much more efficient than Najee Harris in both the run and the pass game.
Why are we out on George Pickens?
He's just not good at football.
But is there anyone else that is on that roster at receiver? That's the problem.
Nope.
So we're just out.
No,
we're just out on the Steelers, huh?
Yeah, it was like some problems with the pass volume and just George Pickens. I think he actually was fairly efficient. He had a decent yards per route run. But can he keep up the target share that he had when Deontay missed last year? I don't know. And then Russell Wilson, uncertainties. Russell Wilson takes a lot of sacks. Justin Fields takes a lot of sacks, and he runs. It's just not a good recipe for success in their pass game.
All right. I really, really, really like Tyler Lockett, especially here at this spot. His ADP's actually been going down a little bit, but I do have some correlation reasons to consider Tyjae Spears here. I think that's a little bit closer to a coin flip at running back, kind of a 1A, 1B situation with Tony Pollard, and I have some correlation reasons to prioritize him here with the Colts. So that's why I did that.
I like all of these receivers at the top of the queue right now. Lockett, Shaheed, and Palmer. Pretty comfortable clicking all of them. I need a running back in this range usually, so that's what I end up going with. See, we did see Curtis Samuel go. What was that, like pick 90? Right after he took Najee. Yeah, it's going to move up.
And there goes Shakir. So, I mean, I would definitely take flyers on Shakir at the lowest ADP if we think they're all kind of fairly close in expected workload. So that's definitely something interesting to think about here. Still need some running backs, but I'm not loving what's here. So I'm just going to take Tyler Lockett and take some safe points here since I don't see much of a floor at running back with what's left anyway. So I'm just going to take what I think is best.
So even with the positive things we've seen on Javonte the last few days, you're still not in?
I have him projected pretty well in this range. Probably at his cost, he's probably the best pick in this range now that we've seen news be super positive on him. So I just have a mental block here. I think I have to get over there. I really like the other options in that backfield, but I guess this is one of those things, zooming out, obviously single entry contest, but it's still part of a larger portfolio for me. Having 0% exposure to one of the starting running backs in the NFL probably a mistake. So I'll have to consider that moving forward. I did, I guess, have correlation reasons to look at a Denver running back there too with the Indianapolis Colts. They play Denver in Week 15. I just think I can get Denver correlation another way if I want it. So,
Well, Audric Estime, similar to how you've been touting Nick Chubb since the beginning, you were on Estime over, like I was on Jaleel, you're on Estime, and now I'm just pounding Estime before he moves up a couple more rounds. Is Chubb still on the board?
Well, he is. Yes, I wouldn't expect him to make it to still be on the board for much longer because his ADP has risen to this spot. He is an 11th round pick now on average, 126.6. That's, I want to say, up about 20 spots over the last couple of weeks. Jerome Ford still went ahead of him here by the owner here with the first pick here, which I think is definitely an interesting choice. Probably not one that I would make, but I digress. How are you approaching the rising cost of Nick Chubb? Are you still clicking on him?
I've been slamming him with the anticipation that I'm still going to get closing line value. Yeah, I think he's still going to continue to rise. And so I've managed to, he's fallen because since his ADP has risen so much, so fast, like he's falling past ADP for me still pretty regularly in my slow drafts anyway. And I'm usually clicking on him most of the time now. Not clicking Jerome Ford at all basically anymore, but I have a bunch already.
As Herbert comes off the board here, Austin Eckler comes off the board. I really want to take Mike Evans just to make Jets 13, or excuse me, Mike Williams just to make Jets 13 super, super frustrated. I'm not going to do that. I am going to take Nick Chubb. Why not? I will add to the bag here, but I think he makes sense when you have a start like this. We're chasing a home run hitter late here at running back to make up for the fact that I didn't really build much of a floor at the position, and he's just the obvious choice for that here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins are pretty similar for me right now, especially with the reports that are coming out. And J.K. Dobbins, I expect him to rise in ADP a ton too. So I think if you're drafting right now, probably take some J.K. Dobbins if you can stomach it.
I think it's Nick Chubb, Antonio Gibson, and J.K. Dobbins. I think are my highest exposed running backs right now in general. So I agree with you.
Nice. He went with the Mike Williams, Aaron Rodgers stack. I wonder if he's going to tack on his boy in the last round.
All right, I got a 2-3-5-1 here. I love Dalton Schultz in this range. I just, if everyone is going to be super high on this Texans offense, he's the easiest piece to get because of his cost here in the double-digit rounds. So I think he's going to end up being one of my highest owned tight ends for that reason.
Yeah, same. Love clicking on him if I miss out on Goddard. And then I'll throw out, we've talked about him, Noah Brown too, is still free in the last round. I've been clicking him a bunch.
So I would like to find a Washington Commander at some point just to fill out my Eagle correlation. And then looking for a New York Giant and a Bronco just to fill out that Indianapolis Colt correlation. And I'm not super concerned with really anything else on the roster at this point. So that's kind of what I'm looking at as we round out the last, 5 rounds here, Chuck. And I need basically running backs and receivers, running backs a little bit more so. So that's kind of what my attitude is here. I'm terrified by reports of players could get cut this early in the process of training camp. So, like for me, a player like Kendre Miller, who I see at the top of my ADP roughly right now, he might have already gone. He's a player that's just completely crossed off my list. I will no longer be adding him for that reason.
Yeah, like I only have a couple percent of him, but now I'm not going to be adding to that at all. Like talking about the zeros, I mean, we're not going to get a Kyron this year, but there is going to be a running back that emerges out of training camp that's going undrafted right now. I mean, I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this on the stream. I told Chris before the stream, but Kenneth Gainwell was getting first team reps mixing in with Saquon for the Eagles in training camp. So, like, I was so upset. I had a bunch of Gainwell. I have not drafted him since the big board, but now if I need a running back in the last round, like similar to Najee Harris, like we know the coaching staff likes him.
Right. Particularly, they like him in like that hurry up, like passing down roles. So that's probably, if I had to guess without being there to observe it, why he's seeing first team reps if they're practicing kind of those situations. It's a positive sign that he still has that role, right? So that's a path to him getting on the field. We have not seen anything similar yet. It's very early in the process for Will Shipley. So I have absolutely gone back to clicking on Kenneth Gainwell as well.
And it's a guy that we have confidence, especially now that it's going to be on the roster come week 1, which is really important with these last round picks. You really don't want to zero.
This is just a gross range right now, Chuck. I don't love really like any of these players. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm actually going to go with Wandale because of the correlation that I need there.
Regardless of correlation, Wandale is a player I've been targeting, and then for Denver, Marvin Mims, if he is the wide receiver too, there could be a pretty valuable role. He disappointed year 1, and then Troy Franklin, I've been taking some shots on late too.
I was just kind of eyeballing him. He's got a decent. He's got the ADP actually on his side anyway, so the field thinks he's the better buy anyway. We've got 6 receivers, 3 running backs. Probably going to look towards some of those running backs now. And this is what you've talked about several times here. John obviously did it again here, but backstacking Aaron Rodgers is extremely easy to do. Mike Williams, Tyler Conklin. I have no problem with doing that. I don't know if I would make it like 50% or more of my portfolio, like I suspect he's doing, but it's definitely a doable stack.
Yeah, very, very strong to pair your tight end. Or if you have a quarterback and you can grab his starting tight end, do it most of the time.
So I got Demario Douglas here just because got to take one of my guys.
We got Jets 13 in the chat. 50% is too low.
Can you tell the people about joining Underdog Fantasy and the offer that we have for them here?
Yeah.
Next.
We got quite a few viewers tonight. If any of you made it this far into the stream, you're not yet a member of Underdog Fantasy. Go ahead and click on the link in our description. Use the promo code Occupy2, Occupy then the number 2. They'll match your deposit up to $250. And we talk about it all the time. It's just, free money in fantasy is hard to come by, and this is free. If you have like a smaller bankroll, you want to deposit $250, they'll match your $250. Now you have $500 to enter in best ball drafts. You can do a lot of damage with that $500, and you're only in for $250. You have a pretty good chance of returning at least your investment, and then the sweat of winning a big pile of money is pretty fun. So, highly recommend.
I would say I think I whiffed a little bit here. I think Rashad Bateman is the best buy in this round 14 range. I don't mind Demario Douglas. He's by far commanded a ton of volume in Patriots camp, but I mean, we definitely expect when we zoom out and we say a lot on our shows together, I like players on good teams. It's pretty clear here the Ravens are the best team to select a player from. So that's what I would probably advocate for in the future in this spot is I'm personally buying a lot of Rashad Bateman. I know that you have been off of him at least a little bit this summer. I don't know if you've changed that attitude a little bit with the recent reporting, but Rashad Bateman looks like a really good buy down in this range.
I've adjusted the way I view him a little bit. We always got to be willing to adjust our takes and our thoughts on players to new news. And now that we have confirmation that the coaching staff likes him, they think he's going to be good. I'll definitely start mixing him in. I still question what the ceiling case is because he's had an opportunity in the NFL and he has not delivered at all.
All right. This is going to be one of those ugly running back teams. There's just no way around it at this point. Got to hit some home runs here. Braylon Allen is one of my favorite targets for that. We suspect he will have some passing down involvement in the Jets offense. And then obviously there's the asymmetric upside if anything happens to the players ahead of him on the depth chart. Running back, the position where it's very easy for that to happen. We see, to your point, guys that we weren't expecting pop and have big ceiling weeks throughout the season due to injuries fairly frequently at the running back position. We don't know who these guys are going to be, but if we just kind of gobble up all these kind of RB2s, RB3s down here, we're gonna hit on some of them. So that's what I choose to do with these kind of hero to zero RB-esque builds is hope to hit some home runs down here late.
Yeah, I agree. Just find the balance between talent and opportunity, and anyone, like mostly anyone, can fall in the end zone twice.
What do you speaking of guys that can fall in the end zone? I am going to click on a Stime here as well. I'm literally just grabbing the running backs that I think have that value, even if they're a little ahead of ADP, because it's my biggest need. But who else down here do you like? We've talked about these guys quite a bit, but there's players like we got a couple of Bear running backs. So I think Khalil Herbert just came off, but him and Rashawn Johnson, Tyrone Tracy with the Giants. I've got kind of the ADP at running back on the board here. Who are your favorite guys here?
I think Khalil Herbert just came off the board. I like Khalil Herbert. He could get traded. Even if he doesn't, I still think he could have value on the Bears. Like, we know he has ceiling game potential. It's really gross from beyond here, though. Like, I'm taking Braylon Allen. I like Braylon Allen. Like you said, it's not just handcuff value. He will get snaps regardless of Breece Hall's health, I'm pretty sure. Backed off of Bucky Irving. I'm taking a Stime every time right now that I have the chance because I think his ADP really jumps in the next week or two. And so want to fill my bag right now. Maybe I won't take him as much in the last couple of weeks. Madison is the backup. If something happens to Zamir White, he will be the workhorse regardless of who else is on the roster. And Keaton Mitchell, I've started adding to. I don't know if it was you who recommended Keaton Mitchell.
I do like Keaton Mitchell, explosive player. Would love to see him play his way off of the pup list before camp ends here. That's the only small concern here. Now at receiver, for people that may need receivers here late, your guy sitting right here at the top of the board by ADP, DJ Chark. But who else do we like here?
Let's see. I like taking shots on all the rookies: Jalen McMillan, Devontae Walker, and Malik Washington. Derek was talking about Jalen Tobear, who maybe that's a blind spot for me. Are you interested in him?
I haven't been to this point, but I think the wide receiver 3 job there probably up for grabs, and it certainly makes sense that he would be in the mix for it. Former Dallas Cowboy Michael Gallup just retired this week, and that's a good way to transition the conversation to the Raiders wide receiver 3. We've talked a lot about teams that don't really have a wide receiver 3 with any ADP whatsoever. Chuck, that is definitely a wide open spot there, and it's looking a little bit better for, I think it's Trey Tucker there for the Raiders, who's the next highest player on the depth chart. So he's a player I would expect to start clicking on here late if I need receivers as well.
That was another team I looked into actually on the Raiders, and it actually is going to get me onto Brock Bowers a little bit more than I have been.
How about Michael Mayer, the other tight end, last year's darling? Are we considering him at all, or are you just on Bowers?
The guys I were listening to seem pretty knowledgeable about this stuff, and they thought Michael Mayer was still an okay shot. Maybe Brock Bowers gets hurt, and like we said, we don't know who the wide receiver 3 is. What if the Raiders just run a ton of 2 tight end sets and Michael Mayer sees the field anyway? Then he could be a pretty good. I don't know what the ceiling is, but I don't know that we're finding much ceiling in any tight end that late anyway.
We lit the torch for our final wide receiver. Rams correlation would be there if there's a Rams player I like here. I don't think that there is, but that would be something worth considering. We love correlation even if the quarterback is not involved. And then obviously Estime was my Denver correlation with the Colts. So we're fully correlated with the Colts stack here. So pretty happy about that. And I know it's boring, but I'm going to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a player on a good team, and there's paths to playing time upside on early downs, we think, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know some of the recent news was that Deneric Prince was seeing some higher than expected depth chart reps early in training camp here, but I still think Hilaire is going to end up being ahead of him. I'm not sure I buy into that just yet here. Really appreciate you joining me here, Chuck, this evening. This draft was faster than our usual 30 seconds per pick drafts. So that caught me off guard, but we're still at like 8:45 here. So the show about the same length. Do you think these 15 to 20-second drafts are going to become the norm next year? I have a feeling that that's the case.
I hope not. Yeah, because it's like every new contest they've come out with has been the small ones, like these single entries, and they've had only the 20-second or 8 hour option. And I just really hope they don't do that for like the big contests that they open in the beginning that are staying open the whole time, like weekly winners, Best Ball Mania, Eliminator. I don't mind it in like the smaller contest, time box contest, but I really hope it's not the norm.
I agree with you, and for selfish reasons, because what I will say is that is extremely difficult for this small universe of people like you and I who have to do these shows and then also make draft picks while doing so. Skeletor, one of our members, had the seventh pick here. I went back to the draft board. He had Justin Jefferson in the first round, and it looks like he got a ton of Bears players there. Travis Kelce, Jonathan Taylor. He did end up going with Justin Herbert and Drake May and Bryce Young as his quarterbacks. I guess, so we're looking at the 7-hole Skeletor 0901. You have any immediate feedback for this subscriber, Chuck?
Seems fine. I like the structure of it. Some of those guys aren't my guys, but some of my guys aren't your guys either. So, but as long as the structure is good, that's what I care about the most, and the structure is good. So it's a good team.
Kelce early, and then Hunter Henry as his backup tight end. Seems like a pretty high floor tight end too. I like that as well. A little bit more of a zero-ish tight end room with Conklin, Likely, and Gesicki, but I like that as well, especially because we had that Likely discussion earlier. If anything happens to Andrews, that's pretty strong. Devontae Walker, I believe he grabbed Lamar Jackson early. So with Zay Flowers, definitely think that this is an interesting team as well by Jets 13 with, of course, his requisite Aaron Rodgers stack. But I digress. Pretty solid draft room all around here. I do give myself the edge over the competition, however. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure these guys will be tracking it all season long, and they'll be ribbing me in the Discord. If other subscribers want to join contests with us, we certainly are happy to do that, understanding that obviously like only one or two of us can advance out of these contests. So, definitely think I would advise consuming the show's content and not necessarily entering the draft, but it's fun for everybody to draft together. So I definitely get that. This is going to do it. I think I'm going to probably enter that $75 one. The name escapes me at this point. I'm going to go back to it. The Bulldog, probably offline, because I love that idea of a 20-seat final and a 20% chance of advancing in each of those playoff weeks. This is a really, really strong structure, Chuck. So if that doesn't fill, maybe we can try to get another show in at some point this weekend. But that is going to do it for me this evening, unless you have anything you want to share with the people before we get out of here.
Nope. We're good. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks.